All right, welcome everybody to our May virtual tasting for the Forgotten Grapes Wine Club with I guess we'll call her the VeroVino, excuse me, VeroVino impresario, importer, owner operator, boss, girl boss, so many titles for Sheila Donohue, who Allison will be introducing us to in just a minute. Before that, just a little bit of housekeeping as always. Of course, we love to hear from you. We are going to mute everybody during the discussion. So if you've got any questions for Sheila, any comments, any food pairings, whatever it might be, throw those into the chat. And Allison and I will be monitoring those and throw them in as needed. Probably all got an email from me today. And I know you got, those of you that are on Allison's list got one earlier this week about the Festival of Forgotten Grapes. We know some of you have already signed up for it. We are so looking forward to seeing you on June 29th, Saturday, June 29th at Frankie LA in downtown LA, in the Arts District of downtown LA. If you are interested, we are about 2/3 of the way pre-sold on the VIP tickets. So we only have a small amount of those left. They're going pretty quickly. And then secondly, the general admission tickets, the early bird, expires on May 15th. So if you're interested in getting your early bird ticket, saving the $10, getting your early bird ticket for just $49, definitely visit festivalofforgottengrapes.com now. I know Allison can talk about this. We've added a couple of new wineries onto it. Seems like we're getting one or two every week, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So we've got a nice round group. I think I counted. I think we're up to I think we're at 50 unique forgotten grape varietals that are going to be available. And I suspect as we get more of the wines in, that number will only increase, which I'm really looking forward to.
So great to have so many varieties.
Yes, and varietals.
But yeah, we're up to 34 wineries, and it's going to be great. So tell your friends if you've already bought your ticket. Tell other friends to come. It's going to be a fun event, a unique event, and
yep. And there will be food served. We've got two food vendors who are going to be there. Boy Blue LA, who does pizzas, I believe, gourmet pizzas, wood-fired gourmet pizzas right there. And then Gaucho Bites, which is an Argentine-style sandwich restaurant, which I'm really looking forward to trying them out. So it should be a lot of fun. Make sure you get your tickets. Tell your friends. Spread the word. We love to see you at the Festival of Forgotten Grapes. Okay. With that in mind, Allison, tell us who we are chatting with tonight.
I'm really excited to have my friend Sheila, because she is my friend. We met, 2019, when I was doing an event called Effervescence, a big sparkling wine festival, and Sheila is a big sparkling wine fan. So she came as an attendee to the event. Some of the partners in it she was friends with, so we met and became friends. And then little did we know that we were going to be in the Vinitaly International Academy course together to try to get our certifications in Italian wine. Let me clarify. She passed. I did not. The trick to passing that test is not just knowing Italian wine or speaking Italian wine, but really knowing it and living there. And while you're going to hear Sheila's American accent, she spends half her time living in Bologna, Italy. And that's where she fell in love with wine and can tell us a little more about her story. But she splits her time between Ventura County, where VeroVino is based out of, and Italy, where she's able to source all these wonderful gems, small producers, really focused on the word I hate the most, but in the best ways, natural wine. So very minimal intervention producers who are not doing additives and herbicides, but biodynamic and organic and handmade wines to craft what we're going to taste today. So yep. Sheila, welcome to the Forgotten Grapes Wine Club. We are super excited because most of these are forgotten grapes, like our first wine, Famoso. Before we get into that, we always ask people a question at the beginning, which is, what is the most memorable wine you've drunk? What was that aha moment for you? And you're gonna have to unmute yourself.
Oh, okay. Hi, everyone. Yeah, thanks, Allison and Chris, for involving me. I actually started my company for this reason, to have people enjoy the discovery of new grapes and new wines they may have not tried before, and also from small producers, meaning people that are farming their own land and making a product that in which they're thinking of their land and tradition in making it. If they're not thinking about the market that's going to be sold to, they're thinking of the place where they are. And speaking of which, when I thought about this question, I must say that one of the wines that stands out is our wines from this woman winemaker in Tuscany that Allison actually met in March because she was visiting California. Her name is Antonella Manuli of La Maliosa. And when I went to visit her at her winery in Maremma, Tuscany, which is like the Wild West of Tuscany, with her was her former colleague, Lorenzo Carino, whose family is now 6th generation making wine in Piedmont, Italy. And both of them were just very prolific, inspirational people. And honestly, I was just enthralled when I visited their really their vineyards. That's what really left the impression on me. And I mean, sure, you know, they're organic and biodynamic and all this kind of stuff, but it was just the place that the nature around me that I still remember to this day, the smells of the vineyard, and really then they invited me to lunch, which was great, and then I finally tasted their wine, and it was that sort of all that, you know, build up, and the wines were just delicious. So I think that you know, it's like you remember a wine from the whole experience. To me, at least, the whole experience that, you know, really made you that kind of like enveloped you while in this case I was trying the wine. And
actually, I'm going to be visiting her next week. So,
oh my goodness.
And she makes an olive oil that's like rated one of the best olive oils in Italy or in the world.
In Italy.
In Italy, super high phenolics and everything. And Sheila also imports that, so you can always buy it directly from her.
Very nice.
But I'm gonna hand it over to Chris to ask the next questions. But I will say, Chris, you're gonna have to ask Sheila at some point how she got into wine, because wine is a new thing for her.
Sheila, I hear wine is a new thing for you. How did you get into wine?
So it certainly wasn't my family and growing up. I mean, not just because I'm 100% Irish, but just my parents, like, you know, they just didn't drink wine. It wasn't part of the culture of me growing up.
From the Milanese Donahues?
Yeah. So I did actually had an Italian American boyfriend when I was in my mid-30s. This is while I was still I grew up in the New York area, so that's where I was, and he was I don't know, like 2nd generation maybe. So he impressed upon me some of the aspects of the culture of like real Italian, not Italian American, and you know, and also starting to appreciate some, you know, wine in general. So I suppose the first wines I really started to appreciate happened to be Italian wines. But you know, it wasn't. And all this time, I was working in fintech and banking technology. That was my career for 30 years, and that's what brought me to Bologna, Italy, in 2001. And believe it or not, so I wound up meeting my husband in Bologna. He has his family had a 3-generation bakery, so he was really tied to Bologna. And I honestly wanted to come back to America, but I couldn't. So I'm like, all right, I'm stuck in Italy. What am I going to do aside from work? And I decided to pursue a sommelier course, because at that point I knew I liked wine, I liked food, and I just wanted to learn more. And so that's what got me into wine as a hobby. And then fast forward to 2017, I had a year sabbatical when I could do anything I wanted to. Although I wasn't necessarily thinking of getting into wine, certainly banking technology is much more lucrative. But I was really following my passion, and especially passion of small farmer artisans that whose wine's born in the U.S. So that was sort of the catch. I found out that that most of the producers I knew that weren't in the U.S. So I thought, why not start a company that's all about discovery of new wines and olive oils, but that are also authentically made.
Was there one wine or winery in particular? Because I find a lot of the importers that I talk to, it feels like they've got one particular wine or a story with a winemaker who was kind of the impetus to get them to bring that wine to the United States, and then they could see, oh, I've got to fill a container ship with wine, so let me go find other producers out there.
No, it really was just the variety. I mean, I just love variety. I love variety in food. I love trying different things. So from the beginning, the idea was to have as diverse selection as possible. And in fact, if anything, these are small production wines, so there's a scarcity factor. So the idea is to kind of switch it up, and then if one wine runs out, then to introduce another one.
Yeah, I definitely want to talk about the logistics of becoming an importer, but before that, we have to talk about the Monte Sasso, the Braschi Famoso here, which is a forgotten grape wine that I have never had before. So I believe, according to my list, this is 243 on my list of forgotten grape varietals that I have tasted. And what I'm also
you said it was number 243 out of how many?
No, just
that you've gotten to in your life.
That I have tasted, that I have identified and tasted on my list of my ongoing running list of forgotten grapes that I have tasted. This is 243. What I'm most impressed with is the fact that if you type in Famoso grape into the Google machines these days, the Vero website is the first entry right there, talking about your entry about the Famoso grape, even ahead of Wikipedia and Jancis Robinson and everything else. So congratulations on that. You are the bona fide tech expert on the Famoso grape. So walk us through this grape, because it's got just an incredible story, which I've had some Italian grapes that have very similar stories, but this one is fantastical, and that Monte Sasso is a real important designation of this wine.
Right. So so first of all, Braschi is not far from my home. I live in Bologna, which is the region called Emilia-Romagna, and Emilia-Romagna, which is this rectangular region just north of Florence, whereby the western part is sort of close to Milan, and the eastern part borders the Adriatic Sea. And it's actually made up of two cultures that were just, they just kind of grouped them together, politically, if you will, into the same region. And so Bologna is actually in Emilia, so that's the western part, and this wine is from Romagna, which is the eastern part. Braschi is a producer that's very historic, very tradition. It's known as a very traditional Romagnolo winery. This Life is Beautiful, if you remember the film that won
Roberto Benigni. How can we forget?
So his wife, who's in that film, she's a Braschi. So actually that's a fun fact.
That's
so
right. She's Luciana Braschi. Is that correct? I'm trying to remember.
you probably have to Google it, but she's
Yeah.
definitely.
For our purposes, she's Luciana Braschi.
Okay. And so anyway, these two Romagnoli, so two guys from Romagna who just love wine, Davide and Vincenzo, they decided to purchase the winery from the Braschi family. This was probably going on 20 years now. And then I met Davide before I started my company. It was actually during that year of sabbatical I was talking about. And so I went to his winery, and in Romagna, there's the two grapes that most people associate with Romagna. The white is Albana. It's a native grape from Romagna. And it was actually another little fun fact. It was the first DOCG for a white wine in Italy. And also Romagna is known for Sangiovese, which most people associate Sangiovese with Tuscany, but technically they say the origin of the grape is in Romagna. Anyway, so when I was with Davide and he was pouring different wines, he had this blend, white wine blend. I think it was Albana and Famoso. And so I asked him what the grapes were. And what piqued my curiosity was Famoso. And he's like, "Oh, you want to taste 100% Famoso wine?" And I'm like, "Yes." And that's what this wine is. So what's interesting is he wasn't even going to pour it for me. It wasn't until I asked him about it that he poured it. And so I found it really exciting. I love to try a grape that I never tried before. It's also easy to say, and it actually means famous in Italian. And I decided to import it. It wasn't until then I was Googling, and then I found I found this short article on the Jancis Robinson website that mentions that after they came out with their book, they discovered Famoso after. So the story of the grape, the rediscovery of the grape, is this farmer Montalti saw these grapes in his vineyard. He was making wine from them, but he didn't know what they were. And he went to the University of Bologna and found out that he discovered a grape that they thought was extinct, and that's what this wine is. And Braschi gets their grapes from the original vineyard.
Yeah, I think that's what I took away from this article was that the Monte Rosso was the original vineyard, those lost grapes that had been just sitting there for decades, if not a century. And it was kind of overgrown, and this farmer came and discovered them. And then the gentleman behind Braschi, and I don't remember if it was the original Braschis or these gentlemen, but they basically used those cuttings and planted it, and have basically carried on the line of that original Monte Sasso lineage.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. It's got such that classic Italian dry white profile, like great acidity, real bright, a little minerality, lots of lemon, a little bit of lime note on this, but it's so refreshing. And with that amount of acidity, it's super easy to drink. I mean, it's not kind of that raging high acidity, just so well balanced.
Yeah, it's interesting because when I read about the grape, when I was reading about it as well, it said that it has a fruity and floral nose similar to Moscato. And so I was sort of anticipating something a little more floral that the grape has, but this one, it has that great minerality and acidity. It's just shock it, but it also has some nice body and texture to hold up to.
Yeah, and we're hearing in the chat this pairs so well with whether it's vegan shrimp, whether it's non-vegan shrimp, lemon capers, all sorts of things. Jeannie and Mike said this goes fantastic with a aglio e olio. Did I pronounce that correctly?
You did.
Oh wow, that's first time for everything. Excellent. It's a great varietal to go with your aglio e olio. No, this is a wonderful wine. And what I'm most impressed with, like, especially living here in Paso Robles, we're going through a phase now where a lot of the original wineries, original winemakers are starting to get to retirement age. Their kids don't want to take over. Their properties are being sold, and the new owners are basically immediately changing the name and forgetting the history behind it. But it sounds like Davide and was it Vincenzo?
Vincenzo.
Yeah, they they bought this property but have kept the Braschi name going, which I think is so important, and you tie into that history. Yeah, absolutely. No, this is a beautiful wine. So we have some pairings. Sheila, what do you recommend pairing this with? What are some of your normal pairings that you think about with this wine?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind would be spaghetti and clams. Spaghetti con vongole is how the recipe that it's one of the first recipes actually I learned when I went to Italy. But the white sauce, not the red sauce.
Okay, nice.
The right way.
Manhattan clam chowder, not that New England crab. Nice.
But no, I just that here in Ventura, I've been going to the farmers market, and I've been learning about the different citrus fruits that you have here. I'm from New York, and so I kind of asked the farmers about them. And this wine, this Famoso, the sort of the in the back of the palate, if you will, I get Mexican lime. You guys know Mexican lime? It's kind of, yeah, it's tart, but also, juicy.
Yes. I've had a lot of margaritas, so I'm pretty familiar with Mexican lime. No, that's great. Go ahead, Allison.
I'm just curious with this wine. Obviously, it's stainless steel. Is there anything that they're doing in the vinification? Is it any lees stirring, anything, or is it just press and ferment and go?
Yeah, just ferment. Yeah.
It's a really textured wine.
Yeah, how many do you know how many total acres or hectares there are of Famoso? Is it a grape is it starting to come back? Is it something that's being embraced by others in the Romagna region, or is it still kind of just a really small, just a few acres, a few hectares?
Yeah, I'd say there's maybe, I'm guessing that maybe there's 70 producers that are making it. And mind you, in Italy, most of the producers are small. So, I'd say maybe 20% of the Romagnoli producers make Famoso, but it is a site-sensitive grape, so it can change a lot, producer by producer. So you mentioned Monte Sasso, that's like the area where it's from. It's higher elevation, and Sasso means stone. So there is presumably, I find this Famoso to be more minerally compared to Famosos that are from lower lying regions, and let's say more of a clay soil. Okay. Those will have a profile that will be more fruity, and this one has more structure, more minerality and salinity.
That's interesting. That makes me think of again, not an Italian grape, but Albarino, which I find tends to pick up more of the soil. If you plant it closer to the coast, if you plant it more on limestone, you pick up more of that minerality than other, like domestic Albarinos, which don't have that same salinity and brininess that like a Rias Baixas Albarino has.
Is this a grape you think that's going to have a comeback of sorts? Do you think it'll become famous at some point?
Well, when I first started to sell it, because we are national importers for our producers, and also from New York. So I sold it to this wine store in Manhattan that was selling it like crazy. And he said, everyone's asking for Famoso. And then when I would go back to him and say, hey, you want the next vintage? I didn't hear back from him. So I think it kind of, it peaked and then it went down again. But to your point, Chris, about the SEO, I'd say since January, the top, in terms of Google searches, the top 5 over the past, couple of months has been Famoso.
Oh, interesting.
Coming to our our website by typing in something about Famoso. So there's definitely something, an increased interest. I don't know where it's coming from though.
It's a great word, because in the right context, you just Google famous Italian wine, and instead of getting what they'll now pull up, which is famous Italian dishes, it'll go Famoso.
Yeah. If you miss that you're right there with FAMOS. Boom. I love it. Beautiful. Yeah. So I have to ask you, and I know, you're from New York, you're a national importer, but how do you find the reception of Italian wines on the West Coast versus the East Coast? You've been, based in Ventura. Is there a difference in how consumers sort of approach Italian wines in each of the areas, or is it just, kind of hitting the same?
So I'd say, let's see, the New York market for sure is quite saturated. They're a bit spoiled, I'd say, in terms of the variety, just because it's quicker and cheaper to import into New York than it is to California, even.
Yeah.
So here in California, there's a continued interest in different types of wines, and it doesn't have to be necessarily Italian, but there's definitely this more of a curiosity factor compared to some other states. For example, I've done some business development in Chicago, and that market is, I hope I'm not going to offend anyone, but it's a bit old fashioned. They're still they're not experimenting a whole lot with pushing the envelope with these really crazy obscure wines.
They want Nebbiolo, they want Sangiovese, maybe a Pinot Grigio, and that's about it, probably.
Yeah.
They're nothing like the Forgotten Grapes Wine Club members.
You're all special. Very, very special.
Like this afternoon, I was putting together a palette to send to our distributor in Tennessee, and I sent cases of Famoso there, Albana, these obscure, other obscure grapes. So what I find really encouraging is that there's these secondary markets where there's a lot of interest in different, authentic wines.
Yeah. No, it's amazing where wine culture is popping up these days. Through my girlfriend Teresa, we have family in Springfield, Illinois, Springfield, Missouri. But I was doing a search because we have to go to Springfield at the end of July to visit family, and I was shocked that there were now 7 or 8 wine bars that had popped up in the area. So I'm actually a little excited and interested to get out there, just find out what, and I know it's not Missouri wine, but you know, what wine culture is in Springfield, Missouri, and what wines they're touting, and if there's somebody kind of on the cutting edge.
Hybrids.
No, well, that's obviously the wineries, but you know, I think these wine bars are working with distributors and doing some interesting stuff. So I'm fascinated to see what's out there. Speaking of fascinating and interesting stuff, let's move on to our Rosato, the Nero di Troia, the Kia Ros, which I believe I saw Kia Ros open for the Sugar Cubes back in 91 or 92. I love Icelandic music, so it works out perfectly. And I have to admit, now Nero di Troia, same grape as Uva di Troia, correct?
Uva di Troia, probably. I think the only grape I'm familiar with from Troia with the Troia name is this one.
I think I read that in the descriptor of this grape that Nero di Troia and Uva di Troia are the same grape. But I tell you what, like I took the first sip of this wine, and my immediate thought was, this could sound very strange, cocktail sauce. Like I got almost like a sort of ketchupy kind of tomato, and I got lemon, and it was just like, we talked about wanting shrimp with the last wine, but like this one, I wanted to dip, you know, boiled shrimp into it and eat it.
I'm looking for your tomato sauce there.
It was such a unique flavor. And again, this is why wine is so subjective, but I just like, that was the flavor profile that immediately hit me. It's like, this is, and I love cocktail sauce. So, you know, you got to do it the right way, which is you don't have them make it for you out of a jar. You get ketchup, horseradish, and lemon wedges, and you make it yourself. Hopefully with, you know, lots and lots of horseradish in it. But walk us through.
Almost getting spice off of it, like a little.
Well, there's no horseradish.
No, like a cinnamon or something, a sweet spice off of it.
Yeah. But it's such a unique grape, and this is from, you know, we're now heading well down the Italian peninsula, down into the boot into Puglia. So how did you discover this wine and decide this was one that you wanted to bring into your fold?
Yeah, so I love the region of Puglia, the people of Puglia. You know, there's a couple of regions that are near and dear to my heart, including Abruzzo, which is the next wine. And actually, come to think of it, both the reason both Puglia and Abruzzo are near and dear to my heart is because I've had these wonderful experiences of friends, actually former colleagues, because I worked for 15 years for a banking technology company in Bologna. And they would bring me home with them when they would be visiting their family back in their home region. And so Puglia was, you know, one of the big, you know, first big road trips I did when after I moved to Italy in 2001. And I remember going into my friend's family's house and seeing his father seated down with a glass of rosé, and I just found that little odd. You know, I'm not like first of all, I was thinking rosé at that point. I'm thinking you know, white Zinfandel, right? I didn't really have much experience.
Matus, Lancers, white Zinfandel. Yep.
Yeah. So just to see a rosé was kind of you know, a little odd for me, and then to see a man drinking a rosé. So that got me curious, and I actually wound up, I think, winning the heart of my friend's father, because once he found out I was so intrigued about wine and their culture, they actually brought me to a winery and everything. But Puglia has the longest tradition of drinking rosés out of all of Italy, and it's also a very historic region. I mean, okay, granted, almost all regions in Italy are very historic, but in Puglia, because it's on the eastern coast of the Adriatic and has a very long coast, that's almost close to, it's close to, the Balkan countries in Greece, and it's also not too far from Northern Africa. That it has a lot of influence from other cultures, and also from seafaring cultures. Like one of their traditions is to have like hard bread. Their bread is known to last forever, and
like the hard tack that you would get on sea voyages.
Yeah. The traditional, the hard crust. It's really the traditional sort of Italian bread, that we it comes that type of bread, which is called latte morta, comes from Puglia, and it's a poor region, and also a region that has relies a lot traditionally on the sea because of its long coastline. And so yeah, they have rosés were popular there, going back into ancient times. There's documents showing that they would drink rosé wine years and thousands of years ago. And to be honest, though, Puglia is a bit of a tricky region because it is south. It's in the southern hot part of Italy. And as a sommelier, I look for wine that has balance. So meaning it has to have good acidity in addition to the fruit. And what I like particular about Domus Hortae, this producer, is they're in the northern part of Puglia, so they presumably they don't get the hottest wet weather. And then also they're close to the town of Troia, which is the origin of Nero di Troia, which is of course a red grape. And most people know Puglia for Primitivo, which is the precursor, let's say, to Zinfandel. And Primitivo tends, in general, Primitivo wines tend to be very jammy. They kind of lack acidity. And the Nero di Troia grape has more tannins compared to Primitivo. So it has more structure, and in general, I think that a grape that has a lot of structure lends itself well to a rosé. A fruity, you get a lot of the fruit, but then you also get the acidity, and you don't really get much of the tannins as well.
Yeah, and you can definitely get the acidity and the structure on this one. It is it's not a loose rosé. It's not super fruity. It's very tight, but at the same time you get that acidity. You get a lot of really unique flavors on it. A lot of herbaceousness on this, which I find just so unique. I think that's where to me that sort of tomato influence comes from, is that herbaceousness. It's super interesting. And I've forgotten what I was going to say about this, but it's delicious. How is the red version of this? I know we're only tasting the Rosato, but what does red Nero di Troia bring to the table? Yeah,
it's the one that Domus Hortae makes, called Nero. Is it kind of has it's of course plums, a lot of red fruit, but then you also get like tea leaves. It's a again, I think it's that herbaceousness that you get in the rosé, and in the red version, it manifests itself in a slightly different like taste and sensation. So all the Domus Hortae wines that we import in are all steel fermented and steel aged. So frankly, I kind of like that, because then you get the full expression of the grape.
Matt, I like your pairing. I think that rhubarb and orange, the citrus, the tartness, nice match with the wine.
Yeah, the feta especially, to me, I think that like the saltiness of the feta would match so well with sort of the dry, citrus herbaceousness of this wine. I think that like the rhubarb would be super interesting, but the feta to me is just that little cherry on top of this that I think would be phenomenal. No, it's delicious. And I have to ask, I mean, over the last 7-8 years, it seems like French rosés, especially Provence rosés, have kind of become very in vogue among the coastal elites and whatnot. Have you found the same with Italian rosatos, or is there still kind of an educational aspect to get people to drink rosés from Italy as opposed to south of France?
Yeah, so I actually wrote an article about this subject, and I called it "Break the Glass Ceiling on Rosé." Probably the biggest sort of misconceptions that amongst the wine industry in America, I found is with wine shops. And they only want the latest vintage. The grape, the rosé has to have a certain color. They're just very, very rigid in their approach. In fact, I know we're going to move on soon to the Febo Montepulciano, but this is the rosé version of the Montepulciano called Cerasuolo di Abruzzo. I'll pour it for you, but you'll see that it's technically a rosé, but it looks like a red wine. So guess what? I sell this as a chillable red.
And nobody knows any better.
Just tell them it's carbonic Montepulciano. Oh, that's funny. So we heard a little bit. Oh, all right. Mike and Lynn are with me on the shrimp, horseradish, and tomato thing. Appreciate that. Got a little backing. Any other
Finally.
pairings, Sheila, that you would normally pair with this?
I mean, I just think it's really great with appetizers. I mean, it's easy to drink. And certainly would be nice with a like a pasta, kind of a simple pasta dish with just fresh tomatoes. Not tomato sauce, but just like cut up fresh tomatoes. Not even in Italy, especially in the summer. Many Italians they don't even cook the tomatoes to make a pasta sauce. They'll just use just fresh tomatoes, olive oil, and some basil, on top.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. To me, I'm gonna a little bit of a wild card on this one for me. Like for some reason, I'm thinking either spanakopita or tiropita. Like either of those Greek dishes, but it's that Mediterranean influence. Either like the spinach with the puff pastry, I can see this, or especially like the feta baked into the puff pastry. I think would just be super delicious with this. In fact, like that's what I'm craving right now, which is going to be very difficult to find when we finish our chat here. So
I think what's nice about this in on points that you both have mentioned, that this is a rosé that has some structure. It's got walls on it.
yes.
So it makes it really food accessible. It can go with so many different things. And because it has, Chris's kind of herbaceous notes, you can pull it in with some vegetables, and the saltiness goes with the acidity. And I'm getting a little bit of cinnamon and kind of brown spice, which makes me think of like, I don't know.
That's racist.
Sweet brown cooking spices,
Okay,
but more cinnamon than like cumin or something else. But that makes me kind of want I think of like cinnamon red hots or something, and just I don't know.
So because there are walls on this rosé, you would almost need a wooden horse to penetrate the Nero di Troia, is what you're saying?
Just meant that it's got structure so that it's got sides. It's not flabby. It's not soft. It's not light. It has parameters around it. I don't know how to visually explain the wine that I'm getting.
It's like Vatican City, is what you're saying.
Sure.
All right, beautiful. Keep the Italian metaphors going. I love it. No, this is delicious. And Domus Hortae, Latin, of course, for Sheila. What is it Latin for?
Yeah, that's
I
a
put
good
you on the spot.
She speaks Italian, not Latin.
Domus, I believe there's
Domus Hortae is definitely Latin.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be taking a wild guess.
Okay. All right. We'll look that up in the after show and let you all know what Domus.
And sorry, what is the story of the name Chia Rose? Because it's the Fioretti family that owns it, right?
Yeah, it means just in time. So all of their wines have these names to them that many of them are referring either to pretty much, well, actually one wine is referring to a Greek dialect. One word for another wine of theirs is the local Greek dialect. So it's probably the dialect of the of the town where they're from, which is Ortanova. And in Italy, almost every town or city has their own dialect because of the history of Italy, in which it was like these independent city states initially.
Interesting. Sorry, I'm looking up the Latin, so forgive me if I'm. I haven't taken Latin since 8th grade, but I'm now determined. Domus means house, so we've got that, like a dwelling, like a domicile. So, but I don't know what Hortae means. All right, we'll come back to it.
I know. The town where they're from is Ortonova.
Okay.
So I wouldn't be surprised because their family has been farming in Ortonova since the I think it's the 17 since 1786. Wow. So I'm sure it's referring to the town that Hortae would be the Latin name for the town.
That makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
That's a much better explanation. Wonderful. Beautiful. Let's move on to, like you said, a region that is close to your heart, Abruzzo, and the Familia Febo Montepulciano de Abruzzo. Tell us about this wine.
Yeah, so by the way, I'm having the rosé version. If you see, as I mentioned, it doesn't look.
That's not a rosé. That's a chillable red.
That looks exactly like my red wine.
So the Montepulciano is the grape. A lot of people confused this wine with and the grape with a Tuscan wine, which is Rosso di Montepulciano. Mm-hmm. So leave it to the Italians that there's a town called Montepulciano in Tuscany, and then there's a grape called Montepulciano in Abruzzo, which is a different region. So
and Sheila, you should point out that the Montepulciano in Tuscany produces Sangiovese.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Right.
The Montepulciano di Abruzzo is a grape, Montepulciano.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Just to confuse you,
Clearly, she wants this name for the Tuscan Montepulciano because of her love for the Abruzzo Montepulciano.
So it's a grape because this is a rosé. You can tell it has a lot of pigment to it, and so your red is just really inky in color. So that's typical of the grape. It's also a grape that has a lot of tannins. So traditionally, in Abruzzo, for many years, maybe up until, let's say 30 years ago, you wouldn't find Montepulciano wine as a red wine. You only would see it as a rosé. And it's just in more, you know, more recent times, since the popularity of red wine has come about, that the Abruzzese has been making Montepulciano as a red wine. When I first moved to Italy in 2001, I would go to the supermarket and find, you know, wine for like €2, you know, this like $2 chuck type, you know, and I'd be like, you know, I would be shocked, you know, to find a wine at like €2, and I would buy it. And a lot of those wines that I bought at €2 were Montepulciano red wines, you know, from Abruzzo. But I must admit, after a while, I got a bit tired of the wine. It just kind of got boring to me after a while, and then I moved on. And for years, I didn't have a Montepulciano d'Abruzzo. And then, you know, fast forward to when I started my company, you know, because I love the region so much, I was looking for a small producer that was never in the US before. And it was really hard to find a small producer from Abruzzo, because most of the wineries are either these large wineries or cooperative wineries, which basically means, you know, it comes from different farms. They kind of mix it all in, and or they were these, you know, really well-known small wineries that already were imported into the U.S. And so then I wound up meeting Davide Febo. So this the name of the producer is Familia Febo, which means family. And he was studying law at the University of Bologna. And then his grandfather passed away, and his grandfather was the one that was making wine, and he was the main vigneron. And so he decided to give up his law studies, and he went back to Abruzzo and decided to take over the winery with his sister. And then you know, he kept in touch with me, and then COVID hit, and sure enough, his first release, his first vintage was when, you know, right in 2020. It was the first you know, year that he was releasing his wines. And you know, back then there wasn't any you know, wine trade fairs, and I, you know, was fortunate that we still kept in touch. And then I wind up, you know, tasting his wines in 2020, and I really liked his Montepulciano, the red that you're having. You know what I like most about that wine is the texture. You know, you can really tell that it's from a place, and it, you know, hasn't been tampered with, and there's this richness to it that is you know, really, you know, calls back to the terroir where they're from, the place where they're from.
There's almost like a savoriness on the nose, that it's the dark fruit, but there's this, I don't want to go so far and say meaty, but there's this real savoriness to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's so unique. And I mean, I always find that Montepulcianos, which it's funny you mentioned that Montepulciano was only, you know, not too many years ago, was only found in rosé mode, because I feel like maybe it's like Australian Shiraz. It's been one of those wines that's just sort of exploded on the international scene, because I feel like you can't throw a stone in a Trader Joe's and not hit Montepulciano. Or if you look at a lot of wine lists out there, you know, more of the value priced wines at the bottom of the pricing of the list, tend to be Montepulciano di Abruzzos. Do you find the same thing?
Yeah, I must admit, in fact, I had a meeting at an Italian restaurant in Venice Beach 2 days ago, and
Was it Chile?
and I did bring a bottle of that you're drinking, Febo Montepulciano, but I didn't like open it. I wanted to first ask him, because they already had a Montepulciano on the list, and my my friend that I was with knows that Montepulciano, it's not that good. It's cheaper, of course it's cheaper, and that restaurant just isn't the right target, for that wine. In fact, which place wound up choosing this by the glass is Milo and Olive in Santa Monica.
Yeah.
And they the sommelier there, they just seek out better wines. And actually, I could see this wine pairing well, with just a really good pizza. Probably pizza that has, salami on it, some sort of meat, to kind of interact with the, with the tannins.
Yeah, Marjorie and Janice, a very floral. Matt's loving this with pasta pomodoro. I could definitely see this with like an Italian sausage, something spicy, that earthiness. To me, when I think of Montepulciano di Abruzzo, not the Tuscan Montepulciano, there's always an earthiness to it. Like it has that distinct richness, that fullness. Do you think that's part of the soil? Because I know Abruzzo, kind of south of Emilia Romagna, very mountainous area, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it's mountainous. And actually, I went to visit Febo in July. It actually was during, you may have heard there was a heat wave in July in Italy, and excuse me. And then when I went to when I arrived at their winery, it was right around like 5 in the evening, and but it was still hot. And I was pleased that their vineyards are pergola. So the tradition, that's the tradition, the traditional training system in Abruzzo. And so basically it had that covering, of the vines, and it was actually great. We walked underneath the vines, and it was cool. It was cool there. It was also hilly. Their soil, I remember it being kind of like clay and sandy. They're pretty close to they're like, maybe like they're less than 5 miles from the Adriatic Sea.
Wow.
So so that there's also this, of course, the sea influence from a weather perspective as well.
Yeah, it feels like with the Abruzzo, the mountains go almost right to the coast. It feels like kind of, I guess, like Chile in a certain way is very similar to that that type of layout. No,
it's an amazing place to visit.
Yeah, I can imagine, if you don't get caught in an earthquake, because I know they've had a lot of earthquakes recently, if memory serves.
I was there 2 years ago, and fly into Rome, 2-hour drive, if that, and just some of the most beautiful scenery, the coastline, the mountains you're talking about. It is just a gorgeous place away from tourists. Absolutely worth visiting. Not untouched by tourists, not like you're going to some remote place, but just a far more like authentic, beautiful experience. It's a beautiful land, Abruzzo.
Very nice. Wonderful. Well, food pairings with this one. We kind of talked pizza, we talked sausage, we talked pasta pomodoro. Any additional food pairing, Sheila?
I'm having salami now. It's really good.
Copa or
Italian.
Genoa, or what kind of salami?
Well, I bought it in America, so but it looks like more like the Calabrese kind because it's a little like it's a little picante.
Nice.
Okay.
A little spice
It's-
to it. Yep.
It's also working with some, like an Amsterdam, like an aged Gouda with the kind of butterscotch caramel notes and the crystallization going very well with the wine.
Very interesting. All right, let's move on to the Aldo Clerico 2020 Nebbiolo Langhe. Really interesting wine, as you mentioned to me specifically. These grapes are actually from a vineyard that is designated as Barolo,
Mhm.
but because of reasons, this is designated only as a Nebbiolo Langhe. Take us through that. Why isn't this a Barolo wine, even though it is a Barolo?
Yeah. Yeah, so I did ask Aldo that, so a little bit about background about Aldo Clerico and his family. So his great grandfather basically divided up the land amongst all of his children, and Aldo's father's cousin is Domenico Clerico. So Domenico Clerico is a very, much more well known in America than Aldo. But when you go to see Aldo's property, which is just south of the town of Barolo, you're on the road and you pass by Domenico Clerico's property, and you make a right, and Aldo is right there. So in fact, when I have his Dogliani with me here, Dogliani is Dolcetto, but when I was in a store in New Jersey with Aldo, and he was looking at a Domenico Clerico Dogliani, and he's like, my vineyard is right next to Domenico Clerico. So anyway, but yeah, but Aldo's family never made wine. I mean, certainly they were wine growers, so they were but their main professions were different. So Aldo's dad was a fireman, and Aldo studied accounting and started to work as an accountant, and then he didn't like it. So he decided to become an intern at Domenico Clerico's winery, and he learned how to make wine initially from at his his cousin's property, his cousin's winery, and then he started his own. And his first vintage of Barolo, I think, was in 2004. And Barolo needs to be aged for at least 2 years, right? So anyway, he in 2004 he started to actually make wine, but he didn't want to wait like 3. He doesn't really release his Barolos until 3 years after. So anyway, he decided that he was going to take one of his Barolo designated vineyards and just declassify it and have it as a Langhe Nebbiolo and not age it as long, because that way he could start selling and getting some money earned.
Get those dollars.
Yeah.
Do you know what the secret is to all the Nebbiolo lovers out there? Because there's this joke that like winemakers drink, what do they drink when they're waiting for their Barolo? Is they drink Barbera, because Barolo takes so long, and both the aging requirements and then the tannins, and it takes time. The secret is, if you want good Nebbiolo and you don't want to pay crazy prices, you get Langhe Nebbiolo. It's ready to drink within release. In a couple of years, you can enjoy it. It's not overly tannic. It doesn't need 10 years to age and soften. It's just Langhe Nebbiolos are like the secret.
Yep.
But one thing I must mention is I was at a wine store in Orange County, but in any case, and I had, you know, I had them taste Aldo Clerico's wine.
Was it the wine exchange?
Yes.
Like the only major store in Orange, I mean, the major.
There's three, but yeah, it's like Annie's Boutique Wines, Wine Exchange, but yeah, and High Times.
Yeah, so
Oh,
anyway,
right.
they tasted it and basically they passed because they thought it was too structured. And so what I get from that is the other, you know, it's a little bit like the conversation I was having before about the Montepulciano. You know, there's a big difference between different Montepulcianos, just like there's a big difference between different Langhe Nebbiolos, right? And so they just prefer a Langhe Nebbiolo that has a little bit more approach to it. But then after that, I was with a friend, and she's a wine writer, not you, Allison, someone else. And
you have
she
other wine writer friends? I'm shocked.
And so she got sent a sample of a Barolo that was I looked it up when when I was tasting it. It retails for like, you know, low 30s. So, you know, and I was kind of looking at the label to figure out, like, is this like a single vineyard or is it made by a small producer? Like, who made it? It wasn't clear, like, who made it, you know, but
Wait, I'm sorry, it's a $30 retail Barolo that exists?
Yeah. So
wow.
I tried it, and to be honest, I think Aldo's Langhe Nebbiolo is better than this Barolo.
I personally have, in the limited number of inexpensive Barolos I've had, I have never had one that has wowed me. No. The way Langhe Nebbiolo constantly wows me as this, oh my God, like this $30, $40 wine that I can drink in Nebbiolo that's only 3 years old. Wow, you know. And to your point, Patty, yes, how does someone say a wine be too structured? You're talking about a retailer, so they're thinking of their audience. They're not thinking, it isn't to say they wouldn't like the wine or it wouldn't be great with food or that it doesn't have all the potential. They're thinking about how it's too structured to sell for someone to take home, open it up, and sip it without food.
But that's what's odd, is they said it's too structured, which means they want like a wild, savage kind of like, where are they going with this? It doesn't make any sense. And I feel like, circling back to what you were talking about, Allison and Sheila, to a certain extent, a $30 Barolo is like a $25 Pinot Noir. Like, buyer beware. Yeah, buyer beware.
No, and I think that this is just such a beautiful wine. It's so drinkable. I you know, look, buyers, and also you have to remember, like, when you're dealing with a buyer, as knowledgeable as they are, as good as they may be. I mean, I remember when I was selling wine and I had a Zinfandel that was a very classic Zinfandel. It was spicy and fruit, but not jammy. And I was told by the buyer at Lowry's that this was not a proper Zinfandel. And I said, no, this is a classic Zinfandel. Nope, it's not a good Zinfandel. It should be jammy. You know, I can't argue with someone who has the view that it should be a certain way, and in their mind, this wine didn't have enough jam, and so you can't argue with the buyer.
Because you want your sweet glaze over top of your primer.
Totally. So, you know, buyers are humans, and they have their own odd, you know, structure is probably not the right word for him to use, because
no. No, it's a very odd description, and I mean, the thing about Barolos and Barbarescos, even with the aging, is they're still difficult wines. And like you were saying, Allison, they're wines that generally need to be paired with food. These are not, you know, quaffable wines that you just want to open and enjoy a glass. Whereas I'm gonna defer to Sheila and start calling this a Langhe Nebbiolo. as opposed to Langhe, which is what I grew up learning. But
Well, it's not a Langhe, it's Langhe.
sorry, Langhe, tomato. Going with Lang. It's a Lang Nebbiolo. Do Lang. But it is very drinkable now, which is what I appreciate. You don't get that like super tar and rose petal nose, but what you're getting is the acidity, the brightness, the tannins that aren't overpowering, but definitely fill the mouth. I mean, this is a beautiful wine that just like hits all the right notes, and I can't imagine there's folks out there who would turn their nose up at this.
So I should go down and get another appointment and have them retaste it.
I think so. I think you must have caught them on the wrong day, or they had just had somebody come in who had like, fed them Sagrantino after Sagrantino or something. So the palates were blown. So, Nebbiolo, what would you say are classic pairings with a wine like this?
So, of course, in saying Nebbiolo, of course, I'm thinking Barolo, and when I went to visit Aldo in December, and
what's Aldo like as a human?
He's really laid back. You have to put him in his element though, because I remember because he's so laid back. I interviewed him live on a podcast, and he was a little stiff. You have to get him, where he's like, just like he doesn't feel he's put on the spot, and then he talks about everything but wine. About his kids and his wife.
And Juventus talks about how he hates Juventus.
But his big thing is
why would he hate Juventus? He lives in Piemonte.
Because he supports Torino. Come on.
Oh, no, that is.
There are two teams in Turin.
Well, Juventus is the only team in Torino.
Except for Torino, which, is Serie A. In the same way that somebody can support Espanyol, even if they live in Barcelona.
Yeah, but Juventus is the real team.
Okay, Cristiano Ronaldo. Sorry, Sheila. Didn't mean for Allison to interrupt you so rudely.
Yeah, so one thing I love about Aldo, his approach is that he wants to stay small. He just loves emphasizing that, and I love supporting him for that reason as well. Just another example of in this case Aldo, but like a benefit of a small producer is he makes three Barolos. This is his, let's say, classic Barolo that's from 5 different vineyards around his property. And what he does is he vinifies each vineyard separately and then does an assemblage to create the Barolo. And I asked him, so when you're doing all this mixing from different barrels, what do you do with the wine that's left? And he's like, oh, I'll sell it off, and and he probably sells it, he'll sell it to some, eventually to get bottled, kind of like that Barolo that I had that cost $30-something.
Yeah.
It's just, it doesn't really have like a distinctive character, to it.
So it's not going into Gaia, is what you're saying?
Sorry?
It's not going into Gaia?
No. Costco Barolo, right?
Yeah, there you go. Kirkland Barolo.
But back to your question about the pairing. So when I went to visit Aldo once, it was December, and he invited me and my colleague to lunch at in their town, Monforte d'Alba, and so So it was a very, traditional meal, and they, oh shoot, I forget the name now. Oh, it's called, what happens is they, we were sitting down, and in Italy, if you remember, there's the primo and secondo. Primo is usually the pasta. So this was the secondo. Secondo you usually get, in this case, I was expecting a meat dish, and all of a sudden there's this, pot of, kind of like a concept of a fondue pot, with the light, the flame underneath to keep it hot. But instead of being fondue, it was this mixture of, it's this liquid mixture, and it's called bagna calda.
Oh,
And then it comes with vegetables, so you dip the vegetables in the bagna calda, and we were pairing it with Aldo. So it was actually his first vintage ever, that 2004 I was telling you about, his Barolo, and it paired really, really well. Like I was really surprised at how a Barolo, and in this case it could be the Langhe Nebbiolo that you're drinking, which is basically equivalent to, let's say, a younger Barolo, that, it paired so well, because, technically bagna calda is made from anchovies, garlic, and olive oil. Those are the main ingredients. And I'm sure it was the intensity of the flavors that, that made it, of the dish that made it pair with the wine.
Well, and also because the wine isn't overpowering you with tannins or that, that structure that a big Barolo can have that needs meat to kind of help it. You can see how a wine like this, which still has a freshness to it and a lightness to it, a friendlierness to it, can go with something a little with intense flavor, but maybe not as dense.
Mm-hmm.
yeah. I will share my bagna calda story in a second, but I have to say, Matt said wild mushroom risotto. Carrie said bracchiole as a pairing with this. I want to combine those two together and put the pork jowl into the wild mushroom risotto and then pair it with this wine. I think that would be insanely delicious.
Well, you just go ahead.
I will. So when I had my wine shop down in Riverside, one of the first wine dinners we had were Kate and Kurt Dubost came down and did like a 5-course pairing with 5 of their wines. But one of the dishes she made was a bagna calda with vegetables and pieces of bread with the, olive oil, garlic, and anchovy. And it was just such a mind blower that it was one of the most delicious things I've ever had. So I'm a huge bagna calda fan. I know what you speak of, and I can taste it and like sense this wine with it. I think the acidity of this wine, the tannin compared with the, balanced with the slipperiness of the olive oil and the saltiness of the anchovy would be just an amazing with this wine. So, all right, let's move on to our last wine. And you know what, Allison, I'm going to let you take the reins from here on out.
Well, Sheila already knows because she embarrassed me by putting a reel up the other day. But the wine that stole my heart, my very first wine, the wine I fell in love with, that made me fall in love with wine even before I knew I would ever work in wine, was Brachetto. I was living in Piedmont in a town. Someone handed me a glass at 4:30 in the afternoon at aperitivi, and it was red, and it was slightly sweet and slightly sparkling. And I took a sip, and I was like, what is this? Brachetto to me is happiness in a glass. It is slightly sweet, slightly effervescent. I hope you have a chill on it. It can smell like strawberries. This one, I think, has like wild strawberries. It's like, have it with chocolate and strawberries. It is like happiness in a glass. It is just Brachetto. It's just There's not a lot of it here in the US. When I first came back to the US after living in Italy, I couldn't find it anywhere. People thought I was insane when I would say, do you have any Brachetto? And they'd say, what is it? And I'm like, oh, it's a slightly sweet, slightly effervescent red wine from Italy. And they'd be like, okay, that's insane. And then I would bring bottles back with me every time I went. And it's just, it's in the same family as the Moscato d'Asti from the same region. Acqui and Asti are two towns. I think that Moscato d'Asti can be absolutely gorgeous. I find Brachetto just having the floral and aromatics without even all that sweetness. So, Sheila, take it away and tell us what you love about Brachetto.
Well, one thing I don't think you mentioned is the aromatics. I mean, you kind of mentioned it is the red version, if you will, of Moscato, which Moscato is aromatic. And I remember I was at a wine tasting event in here in Ventura in September, and this woman, who was specifically seeking out sweet wines, never had Brachetto before, and I asked her, like, smell it, because it just has this bouquet that's just really intriguing, and it's the rose that that's the most intriguing aroma, in my opinion. And that
it is a raise. Sorry, a little Bette Midler on that one.
But I think to your point, Sheila, it's the roses. It's so pretty, and so many people have this idea when they hear sweet wine that they go, oh no, but if this wine has a chill on it, take a sip of it. Yes, you get the sweetness, but the acidity is what matches it. And, maybe you only want to have a glass or two at the end of the night. We're talking about 5% alcohol, right?
6.
Maybe. I don't know. What is the alcohol
That's
on this
less
one?
than a beer.
6.5% alcohol. Have a sip when it's chilled. Just let that acidity wash over the sweetness. Then take a strawberry. Take a piece of dark chocolate. And this is just that this is the wine you want to have with those kind of desserts. It's just with berries, with wild berries, with anything like that. It just is. It's not overly sweet, but it is sweet.
Yeah.
Not
and
cloying.
Well, with certain types of charcuterie.
Yeah.
Maybe more like prosciutto and not the picante calabrese salami that I have here, and also some cheeses.
Yeah, I did a cooking class. I went on a Brachetto trip. How happy was I when I got invited on a press trip to go to Acqui and taste Brachetto. And not only do we visit producers, but we did a cooking class. And we made a veal dish that was where we used Brachetto. And we made cocktails with Brachetto. And it just showed the versatility that it does not just have to be with, dessert. That it is a wine that can be paired with prosciutto, with some savory dishes as well.
Allison, you just made enemies of Jeannie and Mike, by the way.
Why? What did I say?
You said the V word.
Oh.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry. I was in Italy. They eat it in Italy. I can't help it.
That's true. No, Carrie says Karen suggests a princess cake with raspberry and marzipan. I have always contended that, because I had a very similar experience the first Brachetto I ever had, just like blew my mind and opened up horizons. And to me, this is the best brunch wine you've ever had. You want to pair this with like cheese blintzes, with, a nice French toast, like stuffed French toast with cream cheese would go amazingly with this. But you mentioned the roses, which is always apparent on the nose. Like you should get, lovely rose petal notes on the nose. It's just, I always called this the strawberry shortcake of forgotten grapes. And by strawberry shortcake, I meant not the dessert, but the, 80s animated and Kenner doll, because it was sort of like sweet and cute and smelled just exotic berries, and this wine was absolutely that way.
How is it selling? How do people respond to Brachetto, Sheila?
So I worked at a wedding last weekend, and so I I had I had sort of free reign from the bride. She said, bring whatever wines, people would
Okay,
like.
that's shocking that you had free reign with a bride.
Yeah. Brought a white, rosé, I bought a red, and then I bought Moscato d'Asti from Ivaldi, this producer, and I brought the Brachetto. And the in general, the favorite was the Brachetto. Yeah. And it didn't surprise me. It's a wine that let's say 90% of the wine drinkers would like. And when I say 90%, there are, certain, wine drinkers that really they just don't like sweet wines. They just really, really want the dry wines, and aside from that, of course, there's a lot of people that really prefer, sweet wine. So they like. I remember going to an HOA meeting. It was a Cinco de Mayo party here in Ventura County, and I brought a Brachetto with me, and I was at a table with mostly non-wine drinkers, and I'm like, try this, and they all loved it. It's like, what can't you love about it? Like, if you like juice, okay, it's just it's better than a juice, I think, right?
Just of the people that are on the screen, how many of you, this is your first time trying Brachetto? Okay, and
3, 4, 5.
Okay,
6.
And how many people like Brachetto?
6.
No, I mean, there's a wine for every occasion. Absolutely. And Scott, we'll forgive you because I promise you'll love it and you'll send me a message later.
Kelly, this will be Kelly's go-to wine from now on. Yes, there she is. I do have to ask Sheila, just because, I'm a wine controversialist. How do you feel about the S word, about Stella Rosa?
It is Brachetto.
It is Brachetto that has been sort of slung to the masses, but in like the cheapest, tawdriest way. Thank you, Jenna. Oh, that's Marjorie. Sorry, Marjorie. Got it.
Yeah, well, today's Moscato, National Moscato Day, by the way. Yes, so kind of sort of celebrating with Brachetto. But I did post today about Moscato, mentioning that it is a victim of its own success because it's become so popular that that there's so many cheap Moscatos that are out there, and then what happens is people who prefer a good wine, they'll just avoid any Moscato, because they assume it's not good. And what I tell people is, okay, chamomile and honey, will you drink chamomile and honey all day? No, but there's a time and place during the day for chamomile and honey. And that's how I feel about wine. And that's also thanks to the influence I've had, living in Italy, is that there's a time and place for every wine. And, and our Moscato, I don't have it with me, but it tastes like chamomile and honey as a wine. And, this tastes, has a different taste, but it's, it's just a matter of just being a little open-minded and realizing that, just kind of being open to a variety of wines, which I think is what you as Forgotten Grapes you're about.
Absolutely.
When I should put in context that when I was living in Italy, when this was introduced to me, it was summer. I had moved there. It was August. I lived in a town called Brachetto that's the rice capital, which means humidity. So to your point, Sheila, it's time and place. At 4:30 in the afternoon, when it's, 80 degrees with 40% humidity, and you're outside and someone hands you this, and it's chilled and it's fresh and a little sweet. And I mean, it's perfection. It's the perfect time and place for that. And that's probably why it left such a lasting impression with me, but time and place is everything with wine.
And also it's low in alcohol. So most, like a spritz, is low in alcohol. Like most of the Italian, drinks that you have at an aperitivo are low in alcohol. Cause I can just imagine, like, who would want alcohol if you're, if it's hot and humid like that.
No. Allison, was his name Davide who handed it to you?
No, Daniele, but no.
Close enough. I see where this is headed.
No, the first person to hand it to me was my Italian sister, Samantha. So.
Oh, well, whatever turns you on.
But I also think that the problem is, and this goes for, like you were saying, Moscato, it's the same problem with Prosecco. Stella Rosa to me is like taking the sweetness to the extreme and not letting the acidity match, like just kind of overblowing it the way a lot of inexpensive Proseccos sort of push it and go, well, we want to be a little sweeter, and they're losing their balance. They're losing that harmony between the sweetness and the acidity. And, when that's your first experience to a wine with residual sugar, of course it's a turnoff. I mean, you might like it, but eventually that's a turnoff. But when you get balance, like you get in a wine like this, it just shows you that residual sugar is not the, enemy.
Yes. No, it's an amazing wine. And like you said, Mike and Lynn, definitely pair this with strawberries, whipped cream, some soft melted chocolate will be phenomenal with this.
Dark chocolate.
What?
Dark chocolate.
Dark chocolate. Melted dark chocolate. There you go. Sheila, before we lose you to the darkness, which apparently we're doing, do you want to clap on the light? I mean, go ahead. It's fine. What would you pair this with?
I mean, of course, strawberries. I guess a strawberry shortcake.
Cheese blintzes.
That actually sounds really good, Chris.
I like I said, it is with the right brunch dish. It is.
Chocolate mousse.
Need a little bit of saltiness in it, so like a stuffed French toast or a cheese blend, some that like cream cheese mixed in the middle, like boom, done and done. Marjorie and Janice chocolate mousse, which absolutely I 100% agree with on this.
Yeah, just think of the creamy sweetness of that mousse and then the acidity, and you're like, oh.
So it's after 8, so we should wrap up. Sheila, as you mentioned, not only are you importing these wines and distributing them, but you are, selling them as well. So, if folks are interested in getting more bottles of any of these wines, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you, or to, do you have a website where they can buy the wines from you?
So our website is VeroVino.com. I can put it in the chat. And I encourage you all to get on our newsletter. It's basically that's what I do. Most of the weekend, or at least. Oh my God, I'm scheduled to write an article about Brachetto cocktails on Saturday. So. And I do have some surprises because last weekend actually at that wedding I nailed down a bartender, and she came out with a really good recipe.
Nice.
So
I'm interested in that because, like, are you pairing it with more like Amaros, aperitivos? Like, where are you going with that? Using it as like a Prosecco substitute, or is it going in a different direction?
Yeah, so my thinking is you can make, and Allison probably know this, you know, when from your trip to the, you know, Brachetto wine region. But my thinking is to avoid alcohol, and in part, like spirits, I want to say, you know, just have wine, you know. In the case of this bartender, she wound up basically she wound up making think of a concept of like an Aperol spritz where you have three main ingredients, which is the Aperol, the Prosecco, and the sparkling water. So basically what you do is you substitute the Aperol with Brachetto. And then what you want is to, and I was referring to before to the Mexican line, like I went to the farmer's market here in Ventura to experiment with different types of lemons and oranges. But a citrus, you know, element definitely helps. Also, there's I discovered there's a native herb here in Ventura called Yerba Buena. That's kind of like so adding that, it's nice to have, because it's an aromatic wine. I'm like, I could put on the lights because I know I'm getting
this is more fun. We feel like we're losing you.
Because once I put on the lights, it's going to be like really, really bright. But yeah, there we go. Woo. Yeah, so this you know, so again, like making the spritz from Brachetto, again, the main ingredients I would suggest is Brachetto, Prosecco, and sparkling water. And then just experiment. Like I was experimenting with friends on Sunday, and it was fun. You know, one of my friends, she actually preferred more Prosecco than Brachetto. Another preferred more Brachetto than Prosecco, which you know, which is all good because, you know, we all have different palates anyway.
When I made a cocktail years ago, I found my old blog post, and this is about 10 years ago, but I said that it's a compliment for cocktails. Playing on the wine's profile, I muddled berries to enhance the strawberry and raspberry flavors because I was working with a Rosso Regale. I said I added Aperol as the bitterness would balance the wine's sweetness. After a quick shake, I topped it with Brachetto, which added acidity and a squeeze of orange. And I thought I made a pretty balanced cocktail.
What would you say about mixing Brachetto with like a Paso Seco? Would that be something that would go well together?
Brachetto with what?
He hasn't tried it yet, but honestly, I think you have to try it because you've got that lemon lime flavor, and that could play very well with the strawberry.
Yeah. Mike and Lynn, you have both Paso Seco and Brachetto. Blend them together and let us know what you think.
Same with Stacy and Matt.
That's true. Yes. And Stacy, yeah, Stacy and Matt do.
And soon Sabrina, when she gets her Brachetto.
No, Sabrina drank through hers. She's you know, she loves her Paso Seco almost too much. Exactly.
There is nothing that stops Chris from a shameless plug. Nothing.
That's true. Hey, gotta please my investors. Okay, Sheila, as we're wrapping up here, if people want to buy more bottles of the wonderful wines that we've had tonight, these have all been delicious, super interesting, and most importantly, super unique from each other. What's the best way for them to get a hold of you, to order online? How can they get more?
Yeah, so I would go to our website, VeroVino.com. So I put it in the chat. And as I mentioned, I would encourage everyone to get on our newsletter. In fact, I mentioned Allison in our an article from 2 weeks ago about Brachetto. And then from there you can, of course, order online. We also have a wine club that is all about discovery as well. So
nice. Excellent. And are you pouring anywhere up in Ventura, or because I know some of the farmers markets up there, like they'll allow some of the wineries to pour?
No, because they're very strict here in Ventura. You have to actually be farming or your land. Like I'm not a farmer. I'm a more of a middleman,
You're a capitalist.
Yeah. But our next event, I guess, will be next Friday. We'll be in downtown LA. I'll be pouring wine, various wines, and also olive oil at a kind of like a coffee shop place called Il Cafe. It's a fun place. There's a pizza food truck, and it's a fun group of people that work there.
Nice. And if you want to pitch the olive oil, you've got 60 seconds. Go.
Well, one of the olive oils is by Febo, and I found out about the olive oil after I started importing the wine. And what happened was, Davide Febo said, when he mentioned that he had olive oil, he said that, oh, it's just for the locals. They come with their own like container, and they just pour from big tank. And of course it's organic and extra virgin. And then I'm like, so he bottled it just for us. So that's also, of course, on our website.
It's amazing. How much of that are you bringing over? Oh,
What?
I said, how much of that are you bringing over?
Oh, she froze.
Oh, she's frozen. Oh no.
Oh,
yeah.
Come back.
There was like everyone was frozen for a second. So
no problem. I said, how much of that are you bringing over?
I mean, it's just I must say, people know us more for wine than olive oil. So we have maybe about five to eight cases.
Okay. A decent amount. Nice. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here, Sheila. We appreciate it. At this point, if anybody wants to unmute themselves, if you've got any questions for Sheila, we'd love to hear it. I know Carrie has one primarily.
Yeah, I had one question. Okay, I'm looking this up. So Sheila, I was in Bologna last summer and took like a cooking, I don't know, somebody's home. And there was a cheese that I have not been able to find here. And so I wanted to ask you about it in case maybe you knew of anywhere I could find it in the States. And I don't even know how to pronounce it, but it looks like squacquerona or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there anywhere I can get that or something like it here in the States?
What is it called, Sheila?
What's that?
What's it called?
Squacquerone.
And what kind of cheese is it?
It's so it's a fresh cheese. I guess the taste, if anything, maybe reminds me a little bit of cottage cheese, because it's a very simple cheese,
But it's not like stracciatella, or not stracciatella.
Stracciatella, no.
It's kind of like, I don't know, like between a ricotta and a burrata in texture, and they put it on like on bread with like a ham. It was just very light and delicious.
Yeah, I haven't seen it here in America. So but you want to hear a funny story? When I first went skiing with my friends, my friends in Bologna, we went north to the Dolomites to go skiing, and all of a sudden talking about squacquerone. I'm like, why are they talking about squacquerone? They're referring to the snow as like squacquerone.
Oh,
because it was like melted.
Well, I haven't had squacquerone, and when I'm in Bologna, I'm going to look it up in 2 weeks. And since it's a fresh cheese, I won't be able to bring it home for you.
Well, please tell me how you like it, though. I mean, it was.
If it sounds a little bit like I can never pronounce it. It's got not stracciatella, the other one.
Squacquerone.
No, the other That's like a soft cheese, kind of like a cream cheese, but it's stracciatella, not stracciatella, but a similar name. No, because stracciatella. Anyway, they have it at Italy, and that's really good on bread with prosciutto on top.
All right, there's something that I can
I
maybe
will figure
substitute.
out the name because I always give there's stracciatella and it's similar, but it comes in a little tub, and I can eat one tub in one setting because it's so good.
I'm posting a link in the chat on how to make your own squacquerone.
I will have I'll have Matt text you so you can see the spelling of it, Allison.
Salvatore?
So you can see
Okay,
how to spell.
but I think Chris gave you a recipe so you can make your own.
Yeah, there's a make your own squacquerone recipe that I found at cheesemaking.com because I'm on that site quite
We'll
frequently,
give that a go.
given all the cheese that I make. So yeah.
All right, thanks.
You're welcome. All right. Anybody else have any questions for Sheila or comments, critiques? Want to talk about her lighting situation?
Carrie's coming.
Yeah.
So we wanted to say these wines were really delicious. Like I've never had a Famoso and that was yummy. The rosé, we typically drink a lot of French rosés, and because I know some of the Italian ones, the Rosato can be a little heavier. But I know what Allison was trying to say about like the walled and having it had more structure than like summer water. You know, it had like a little weightiness, a little, you know, more mouthfeel.
Casey, you should never drink summer water ever.
Well, I'm saying like, you know, with rosé, you can drink, you know, rosé all day. Like just that, you know.
I don't care
easy.
how many Lakers, you know, suites you're in. Never drink.
Yeah, but that was really good. I mean, and the Montepulciano, delicious. The Nebbiolo was a nice, like, contrasting difference. But again, you can drink them, you know, having nice structure, good balance, nice mouthfeel, really, really good.
And think about these prices. These wines are so well priced.
Yeah, and we were just scrolling through your website, and you have so many more. It would really fascinating. We saw like a Malbec, like 2017 Malbec, and so many others, and looking at the olive oil, and we're very excited. It's really unique to have this opportunity to taste all these. So thank you so much.
The
Thank you.
Malioso, La Malioso olive oil, since I bought a bottle, is really, really, really good.
Gonna have to see if I can get that.
Go ahead, Carrie.
Hey, this was a lot of fun. I'd actually tasted all these grapes before, but it was really cool to taste them again and to try them with stuff. I randomly bought some cheese from Italy, which is also a good place to look for Italian cheese pairings. I don't know if I've ever seen squacquerone there. But one of the cheeses I got was an Nato, which is an aged blue, and the Brachetto went really well with it. But that's a side note. That is not what I was asking about. There, so in terms of like you know, lesser known grapes, not completely forgotten, but making a comeback grapes. There's a Tuscan one called Foglia Tonda that I'm sure you guys know about. But I've had that a couple times at tastings, and I really liked it. And evidently, it's something that's been recently revived. Is that, Sheila? Is that something that you carry or you know about? Or
I think I tried it once, and I don't carry it, but I do really enjoy kind of obscure grapes. So you know, so what do you like about the Foglia Tonda?
it's one of those ones that manages to have it manages to be light on its feet, but it also has enough flavor punch to it. It's not overly tannic. It's not, you know, it doesn't kind of fade away like some of these grapes do. And it's just kind of a nice, just like a nice sidebar to Sangiovese. You know, it's like here's something a little different, but it would still appeal to Sangiovese lovers as well. Just wanted to see if you knew about it or not.
Stracchino was the name of the cheese I was thinking
I
of.
think I'm frozen.
No, you're not. We got you.
But Stracchino, Sheila, that's what I was thinking of.
Yeah.
Not Stracciatella, but Stracchino.
Oh, apparently she thinks she can't hear us, which is frustrating.
can-
No,
It goes in and out.
okay. Can you hear us now? Apparently not. No, it reminds me of a Piedmontese wine. I went and visited a winery called Vietti, not Viotti, which is the more famous one, but the Viettis. And they produce a grape called Alba Rosa, which is very obscure, grown in Piedmont, but super delicious and makes wonderful, wonderful wines. Also, when I opened my Forgotten Grapes wine shop, one of my distributors who came in from Orange County to, congratulate me, brought me a bottle of Verduna Pella Vergine, which was another very obscure Italian varietal from the Piedmont Hortae region up there in the north. So yeah, there's lots of obscure things, and it's just a matter of, when you're an importer like Sheila, you kind of have to think, what's going to sell? What can I move? You can play the obscure grapes, but it's like you don't want to be stuck with something that only you love and nobody else will. So it's that balance.
Italy is a fascinating country with over 1,000 indigenous grape varieties, of which they've only identified less than 500. And so there are a lot of forgotten grapes in that country, grapes that were almost extinct, grapes that someone found, like the Famoso and other grapes where someone maintained a little bit, or others that have smaller. A lot of the red wines fell out of favor because they were high in acidity and tannin and body, but they were very light in color, and there became a fad for more intensity in color. Intensity implied, I don't know, something that I don't agree with, but because I think lighter colored red wines can have lots of body texture. But, I think that they fell out of favor and they're coming back, and a lot of winemakers are starting to focus on them. And I think Sheila represents a lot of brands that are, bringing back these grapes and these, celebrating these grapes that have a lot of history. Like Fresia.
Or Schioppettino, my favorite.
Schioppettino.
We have Schioppettino.
Yes. Anyway, the point is we need more people like Sheila out there who are, willing to take the chance to bring in the lesser known, obscure, forgotten grapes of Italy into the United States and really introduce them to people and introduce them to places like us where we can help, send them off to the world.
And while Sheila will be back in Italy in June, next year, maybe we'll have some Italian forgotten grapes at the Forgotten Grapes Festival.
Perhaps, if Allison will allow it, because she has a strict hand as to what can be allowed.
Well, like we can have Nebbiolo grown in California, but we cannot have Nebbiolo grown in Piedmont. That's not a forgotten grape.
All right, I think we will wrap it up at this point. So keep an eye out, coming out the week of the 20th, I believe it will be. You'll get emails from Allison and I about our June winery, which is a Santa Barbara winery called Camins to Dreams, which we are very, very excited about. Tara Gomez, who is the winemaker at Kita Wines in Santa Barbara, which was the first Chumash Indian tribe owned winery, and she was the first Native American winemaker.
Female winemaker. Female.
Yes, thank you. And her partner, Maria Tarabo, who's Catalan. This is their brand. Amazing wines from the Santa Rita Hills, from Ballard Canyon, from all throughout Santa Barbara. Really, really excited about these wines. They are delicious. Interesting story. So keep an eye out for that email. And Allison, anything to add?
No. If you haven't bought your tickets for Festival of Forgotten Grapes, get them. Tell your friends. We hope to see you in person at the end of June, because it'll be fun after all this camera time to I know when I ran into Matt at Pinot Fest in Palm Springs, lots of trouble ensued. But no, it'll be really fun, and we hope to see you in person and continue. But
Yes.
but
Keep
drink
your
more
eyes out.
Italian wine.
Awesome. All right, we'll see you all in June, hopefully, early June for the next Forgotten Grapes virtual tasting, and hopefully later in June for the Festival of Forgotten Grapes in downtown LA. Until then, goodbye, everybody. Take care.